Video games are meant to be an escape from a place where danger is virtual and death is just part of the fun. But sometimes, the line between the screen and reality blurs in the most chilling way imaginable. Across the world, a handful of gamers have pushed themselves to the edge through long marathon sessions, deadly dares, or sheer obsession that spiraled out of control. Here are 5 of the most brutal gamer deaths, ever shocking reminders that even a game can turn deadly when reality is ignored. It was August 3rd, 2005, in Daegu, South Korea. That night, 28-year-old Lee Sung-seop walked quietly into a dimly lit internet cafe tucked between other storefronts along a busy street. Lee picked a corner seat. He logged into StarCraft, and he never intended to stop. He wasn't anyone special, at least not on paper. A former boiler repairman, quiet, soft-spoken, thick glasses, usually seen in a plain gray uniform. He lived alone, kept to himself, and didn't cause trouble. But behind that quiet face was a growing obsession. Hours spent in internet cafes, known in South Korea as PC bangs, were his escape. For just $1 an hour, he could disappear. What began as a hobby quickly twisted into something else, something much harder to walk away from. Over time, Lee began to slip. First, it was skipped meals, then missed days at work. His friends noticed, then his boss. Eventually, he was fired. Around the same time, his girlfriend, also a gamer, walked out. On that fateful Wednesday, Lee sat down at a computer and launched into a marathon. Hour after hour, day after day. He didn't move much, just the occasional bathroom break, a quick nap on a makeshift bed in the corner. For nearly 50 hours straight, he played. The only sound in the room was the soft clicking of keyboards and the low hum of fans, keeping the PCs from overheating. By Friday evening, Lee's body was starting to give up. His mother hadn't heard from him, and her worry had grown into panic. She reached out to his old coworkers, asking them to check on him. They found him still sitting at the terminal, eyes fixed on the screen. He looked terrible, but when they asked if he was okay, he simply told them he'd leave after he finished the game. He never did. Before the match ended, Lee collapsed. One of the gamers nearby, Kim Jin-yu, recalled watching him fall, his head snapping back, eyes shut, face slack. At first, no one moved. It wasn't unusual for someone to doze off at a terminal, but this was different. An ambulance was called. He was rushed to Daegu Fatima Hospital. The doctors said it was heart failure brought on by exhaustion and severe dehydration. His body had simply run out of fuel. In 2005, South Korea had one of the most connected populations on Earth. Over 70% of households had broadband internet. Online games like StarCraft weren't just popular, they were a way of life. Among people aged 9 to 39, gaming was more common than watching TV. The gaming industry earned over $1 billion that year, and for many, these games offered more than entertainment. They offered identity. After his death, South Korean officials scrambled. They called for reforms, insisting this wasn't about a game. It was about health, neglect, and mental collapse. They started enforcing curfews, banning minors from entering PC bangs after 10 p.m. Developers added on-screen warnings to encourage players to take breaks. Health workers even began checking in at cafes. But the damage was already done. More cases followed, more headlines, including one horrifying incident where a baby died after being left alone while her parents played an online game for hours. People began to realize this wasn't just a South Korean problem. It was a mirror, showing us what can happen when a digital world becomes more real, more rewarding than life itself.
So what is the longest you guys have played a video game for in one sitting? Me, 14 hours, Star Wars Galaxies. Yeah, I'm a bit of a Jedi. So in Taiwan at an internet cafe, a man was found dead after playing video games for 3 days.
It started like any other day inside a dimly lit internet cafe in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. The hum of computers, the click of keyboards, the soft glow of monitors painting faces in blue. But somewhere, in that quiet buzz of digital escape, something went terribly wrong. A 32-year-old man, known only by his surname Xie, had checked in on January 6th. He was a familiar face, the kind of regular who'd vanish into the screen for days. sleeping face down on a desk or slumped in his chair when fatigue caught up. Nobody thought much of it when he stayed through the night, or the next night, or even the one after that. In places like this, time doesn't move normally. It wasn't until the morning of January 8th that someone finally noticed. An employee tried to wake him, but Xie didn't move. His skin was pale, his body cold. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. He'd been gone for hours. Doctors confirmed what his lifeless form had already shown: cardiac failure. His body had simply given up after nearly 3 days of non-stop gaming, dehydration, and exhaustion. Police later reviewed CCTV footage and saw something chilling. Just before collapsing, Xie had made small, desperate movements, a faint struggle, before going completely still. Around him, other gamers kept playing, unaware that death had entered their world. The whir of fans and mouse clicks continued, even as paramedics lifted his body away. Authorities said the cold weather and long hours spent motionless likely triggered his heart failure. It wasn't the first case, and sadly, not the last. Only a week earlier, another man in Taipei had died the same way. 5 straight days lost to the screen. In Taiwan, these deaths became an eerie reminder of how obsession with the virtual can quietly take over the real. Xie's family told police he'd been unemployed for a long time, and internet cafes had become his only refuge, a place where he could disappear from the world, where time didn't matter. But for him, the escape became permanent. When the news broke, it stunned the nation, not just because of how he died, but because of how long it took anyone to notice. In a room full of people chasing virtual victories, a man had lost his final battle in silence.
A 17-year-old broke his leg and was bored. He did something very typical, played a video game. But that's where the normality ends. The Russian teen, identified by local outlets as Rustam, died after reportedly playing a game for 22 days straight.
He was just 17, a teenager named Rustam from the quiet industrial town of Ushali, deep in Russia's Republic of Bashkortostan. Like so many kids his age, Rustam loved video games. But after breaking his leg that summer, what began as a simple way to pass the time slowly transformed into something much darker, something that would eventually consume him entirely. With his leg in a cast and movement painful, Rustam withdrew into the one world where he still felt in control, the digital battlefield of defense of the ancients, Edut. At first, it seemed harmless enough. Friends visited to check in, and his parents occasionally peeked through the door to see him laughing at the screen, immersed in gameplay. But over time, the laughter faded, the visits stopped, and Rustam's world shrank to the size of his dimly lit bedroom. Days turned into nights, nights into days. The glow of the monitor became the only light source he needed. He played for hours, then days, with barely any breaks, stopping only to grab a quick snack, use the bathroom, or collapse for a short nap before returning to the game. It went on like that for 22 consecutive days. His parents would hear the steady clatter of keys, the soft muttering to himself, the muffled bursts of frustration or victory, a rhythm that became part of the house's background noise. Until one morning, that rhythm stopped. On August 30th, the house was unusually quiet. No clicks, no keyboard, no sign of movement. When his mother finally pushed open the door, she found Rustam slumped in his chair, his head tilted forward, hands still resting on the keyboard. At first, she thought he'd fallen asleep again, but when she touched his shoulder, his skin was cold. Panic set in. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was already too late. Doctors confirmed the unthinkable. Rustam had died of deep vein thrombosis, DVT, a blood clot caused by prolonged immobility. The same silent killer known to strike passengers on long-haul flights had now taken the life of a teenager, alone in his room, locked in a digital war that never truly ended. The autopsy revealed that his sedentary state, dehydration, and extreme exhaustion had combined to trigger the fatal clot. Police investigators later uncovered something even more haunting. Over the past year and a half, Rustam had logged more than 2,000 hours of gameplay, nearly 3 full months of his life spent staring at a screen. Since his leg injury on August 8th, he had been almost entirely confined to his chair, playing continuously. pausing only for minutes at a time. His parents were devastated, unable to comprehend how a hobby they once saw as harmless could turn deadly. "We thought he was just passing the time until his leg healed," his father told local reporters. "We never imagined it could end like this." Russian authorities were shaken too. A regional children's rights advocate, Aigul Siueva, publicly warned parents that gaming addiction was becoming a hidden epidemic, one of the most dangerous yet overlooked threats facing young people. Medical experts echoed the sentiment, comparing Rustam's condition to economy class syndrome, a fatal disorder that strikes when blood clots form from sitting still too long without circulation. The tragedy made national headlines, sparking debates across Russia about youth isolation, mental health, and the growing culture of digital escapism. To many, Rustam's death symbolized something larger, a generation vanishing into screens, where virtual triumphs replace real-world connection. Friends from his online circle later shared that Rustam was an incredible teammate, someone always online, always ready to play. In the gaming world, he was alive and celebrated, but in reality, his health was collapsing in silence. Rustam's death wasn't just a freak accident. It was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that even the most innocent escapes can turn lethal when obsession takes over. The human body has limits, even if the digital world doesn't. He didn't die in a crash, a fight, or an accident. He died sitting still, in the same position he'd held for weeks, chasing victory in a world that never truly cared if he won or lost.
Twitch streamer PashiBrid has been found dead after a 24-hour streaming session for charity on Twitch.
The night was supposed to be one of generosity and joy, a 24-hour charity live stream for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. But somewhere between fatigue and devotion, a tragedy unfolded live, in real time, before an audience that never realized what they were witnessing. Brian Vigneault, known online to thousands as PashiBrid, was 35, a father of 3, and a beloved face in the World of Tanks gaming community. On that February night in 2017, he was already 22 hours deep into a marathon stream from his home in Virginia Beach. His goal was simple: raise money to help sick children. But as the hours wore on, his voice grew quieter, his movements slower. The chat noticed. "You look tired," one viewer typed. "Go get some sleep," another urged. He smiled weakly, shrugged it off, and said he'd take a quick smoke break. Then he got up from his chair, stepped away from the camera, and never came back. At first, viewers thought he'd fallen asleep. The chat continued, lighthearted at first, then uncertain, then eerily silent as minutes turned to hours. What they didn't know was that somewhere off-screen, Brian had collapsed. When police arrived at his Virginia Beach apartment later that evening, he was already gone. The official call was cardiac arrest. No foul play, no visible harm, just a man whose body had finally given in after hours of pushing past its limits. Friends and fellow streamers said he'd looked exhausted long before he left. He was in rough shape, recalled Jessica Gebauer, another streamer who had been watching him. "We were all telling him, stop, rest, the stream can wait." But for Brian, the cause was bigger than himself. He wanted to finish what he started, one last act of kindness for charity. What followed was an outpouring of shock and heartbreak. The gaming community, used to seeing long-hour marathons as a badge of dedication, suddenly saw the darker side of that culture. Experts pointed out the mounting pressure in streaming, the endless competition for views, donations, and recognition that pushes creators to their physical edge. "It doesn't seem that grueling on the surface," one professor said, "but you're playing, performing, and putting off your basic human needs for hours." Brian wasn't reckless. He'd done marathons before. He'd raised nearly $11,000 for charity over his 5-year streaming career. He was loved, respected, and genuinely funny, known for his sarcastic humor and for being the kind of gamer who'd yell at the screen one minute and laugh the next. Behind all that, though, he was also a father trying to do something meaningful. In the days that followed, his friends set up a GoFundMe page for his children, and messages poured in from across the world, from fellow gamers, fans, even strangers. His clan in World of Tanks, known as Fame, posted a heartfelt tribute, remembering him as both a fierce competitor and a friend who never hesitated to help others. To this day, no one knows exactly what caused Brian's sudden death, but what's clear is this: even in his final hours, he was giving. He died doing something he loved, trying to make life brighter for others. It's easy to forget that behind every stream is a human being, someone who needs sleep, food, and rest, just like anyone else. Brian's story is a haunting reminder that sometimes, even acts of kindness can carry a heavy cost when we forget to take care of ourselves.
I was very scared. I thought he was going to die. He just fell over 3 times. He was blue. He was blue.
It was supposed to be a night of fun, just a group of teenage friends huddled around glowing screens, diving into the world of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. The expansion had just dropped, and excitement was high. Energy drinks, snacks, laughter. It felt harmless, but as the hours turned to an entire day, and the day turned into night again, something inside one of those teens began to give way. In a quiet home in Laholm, western Sweden, a 15-year-old boy sat frozen in front of his screen. His hands still hovered over the keyboard when his body suddenly stiffened, then convulsed. His friends froze in shock as he collapsed to the floor, his body trembling uncontrollably. What began as a simple gaming session had spiraled into a medical emergency. His family rushed him to the hospital, terrified and confused. Doctors later said the boy had suffered what appeared to be an epileptic-type seizure, brought on not by illness or disease, but by exhaustion. His body had been pushed past its limits, over 24 hours without proper sleep, food, or rest. The sheer intensity of concentration, the adrenaline, and the deprivation had combined into something deadly. The doctor's words were simple but haunting. His body just shut down. Thankfully, the boy survived, but the incident left Sweden shaken. Addiction specialists began sounding alarms, calling World of Warcraft the crack cocaine of the gaming world. They said every single case of gaming addiction they treated somehow involved this same game. A game so immersive that some players quite literally forgot to eat, sleep, or move. Sven Rollenhagen from the Youth Care Foundation warned that this wasn't an isolated case. Some people are literally unable to drag themselves away, he said. They will play until they drop. And in this boy's case, that's exactly what happened. His father, relieved that his son was alive, vowed never to let it happen again. They played all day and all night, he told reporters. Maybe they got a few hours of sleep. They ate a little breakfast at their computers. After the seizure, he began speaking publicly about the hidden dangers of marathon gaming. Not to blame the game, but to warn other parents that obsession can turn deadly faster than anyone thinks. Across Sweden, concern grew. Clinics reported a surge in calls from parents terrified their children were slipping into the same pattern, eating less, sleeping less, and losing themselves in the glow of their screens. The country's National Institute of Public Health stepped in, acknowledging that while there was no official diagnosis for gaming addiction, the symptoms were real and spreading. Psychiatrists warned of a growing number of young people retreating into digital worlds, not antisocial by nature, but slowly becoming detached from the life outside their screens. You can play for 14 or 16 hours a day without breaks, without attending to basic needs, said Dr. Richard Graham of London's Tavistock Centre. For some, the consequences are severe. The boy recovered, but the story stuck. It traveled far beyond Sweden, sparking debates about whether games like World of Warcraft were just entertainment or something far more consuming. And while millions around the world continued to log in, explore, and escape, one Swedish teenager had learned the hardest lesson of all, that even a fantasy world can take everything from you when you forget that your real body still needs to live.